God bless you, everybody. So, I had this dream, and I'm just going to try to say the abbreviated form. But basically, what I saw in the dream was um, three men. They looked like cowboys to me. They were back in like the Western times, like in the 1800s. Um, the three men had, like the Asian eyes. I don't know what country they were from, but they could have been Korean, Chinese, Japanese. I don't know. But for whatever reason, they were Asian. After I get done telling you the dream and the interpretation, maybe you guys can tell me why. And post in the comments as to why you think God would highlight them as being Asian, because that part I do not know. So the last guy in the line had a wheelchair attached to him and had some type of, and when I say attached, it was like some type of futuristic technology that they wouldn't have had back in the 1800s. And so it was attached to him, but there was like no strings, but you could tell that it was attached. And he needed this because there was something wrong with his legs or whatever. So one of the guys went to the guy that had the wheelchair attached and said to him, was talking to him. I don't know what he said, but he said, I'm sorry, the guy in the wheelchair said, the person that you're talking to is just my representative. The real me is inside of the wheelchair. He was standing at the time he was saying this. He wasn't in the wheelchair. So the guy goes to the wheelchair, opens up the wheelchair, and inside of the wheelchair, there's like some compartment. There was the actual man that was actually animating the man that was standing. I hope that makes sense. So basically, the statement that he said was, "You are speaking to my representative. You are not speaking to me. And the real me is in the wheelchair." That is the end of the dream. Um, Basically, what God is saying to his people today is that there's an emphasis, there's an importance on the will of man. We all have a will. We all have free will. We have, God has given us the will to choose. We are not mindless robots, mindless drones. Um, we have, God has given us a right to rebel. He has given us a right to obey him, and everything in between. We have free will. So God is really talking about this free will thing. Whenever you want to affect change in a person, not that you want to dominate, not talking about domination, but whenever you really want to get down to what's really bothering a person or what's really going on with a person, you have to go beyond that person's representative. And what I mean by representative is we all put a person forward. Like when I go to work or when I go to the grocery store and I exchange pleasantries with people, "Hey, how you doing? How are you?" "Well, thank you." That is my representative. That's not the real me. You're not going to hear what's really going on in my life. That is a representation of me. That is just my representative that I send forth for you to see on a daily basis. But my true motives, my true desires, the things that I want, you're not going to see that right off the bat unless you are a deep uh, a deep friend of mine. And so God is saying that if you're in a situation if you're dealing with people, if you really want to see them for who they are, you have to learn the art of going beyond that representative. If you are in a job or position where you help people for a living, like say you're a social worker, you're a psychologist, you're a teacher, anywhere you are in a position where you are helping people fulfill their greatest potential, you have to go beyond their representative. And that can go for, I use my example as, if you see me in a grocery store, I'm going to exchange pleasantries with you and keep it moving. But there are other people who their representative will come forth as someone who is hard, someone who is nasty, someone who is mean. And a lot of times that representative is hiding the broken will of that person. A lot of times someone who is mean and nasty puts up that facade in order to hide the fact that they're really a scared little girl inside, or a scared little boy inside. And they put that forward as a way of protection for them. But really, what has happened is their will has been broken because they felt out of control. They felt like they didn't have control of certain situation and they were in danger. So now when you see their representation of themselves, they seem like they are a hard person, like they gotta like nobody's gonna do nothing to them, that type of facade that they put forth. And the reason for that is because someone, you ever hear the expression that someone has broken their will? Basically, someone has possibly went through some trauma and they determined that no one is ever going to do that to them again. And so when you see their representation of themselves, you thinking, I'm going to keep my distance from that person. And that's basically what that person wants you to do. So if you're in a situation and you deal with people, you're a pastor, you're a teacher, you're a parent, you deal with people, you have to learn how to deal with their will. You have to learn how to deal with the will of a person. You have to learn how to work with their will in order to get them to the best possible them that they can be. Because if you don't work with their will, what you're going to find out is you're constantly clashing with their will. You got to get on the same page. And this is the same thing with working with God. You hear a lot of God's will versus man's will. It should never be versus. It should never be against. Our wills should match. God's will and your will should be on the same page. And if it's not on the same page, as many times it's not, and I have experienced this in my life. I think I'm experiencing it now. What I would will to happen in my life, God is taking me in a different direction. And so I have to get my will to match God's will. So I am wanting and I am desiring a certain thing, but I will go to God and I say, God, help my will to match your will. I am willing, even though I desire, and I really, really want what I want really bad. I am going to lay this thing down and I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to wait for my feelings to match up with the decision that I chose to follow you. So I'm taking my free will and that you have given me, God, and I am choosing to match my will with your will and playing this out in obedience. So this is what I'm telling. This is what God is telling you guys. That whatever it is that you're dealing with, that you feel like you clashing with somebody, you banging heads. I don't know in what situation it could be in. It could be your children that you clashing with. It could be an elderly parent that you clashing with because maybe the parent is sick now and they're elderly, and you need to start making decisions and getting the house in order for them because they're in decline, and that elderly person is like, I changed your Pampers, I did this. Like, I'm not trying to hear nothing you trying to say, but you have to respect that elderly parent, and you have to work with their will. And the way that you do that is you try to make it so that they are making the decisions. Basically, you have to give them choices. You want to, not that you're manipulating the situation, but you want to say, the nurse wants to come over and speak to you. Would you rather that they come at 2, or would you rather that they come at 10? That way they have options. They have choices. And they don't feel like they're a prisoner. It is working with the will of a person that's going to make all the difference in whatever situation that you're dealing with. When you start working when you go behind a representative that person is putting in your face, that when you realize that representative is not really them, and you go behind that representative and you start working with the true issue of what that person wants and desires, whether you can help facilitate that desire or not, just the fact that you acknowledge it, just the fact that you got down to that part of that person to find out what makes that person tick, that is going to open up a whole new level of respect and appreciation for you, that whatever behavior or issue that you're dealing with is going to diminish so so much more than if you were just, hey, do this, do that, you got to do it because I said do it. It's going to open up a lot of understanding. So I don't know who this person is. I don't know who this word is for. But God is saying you need to work with the will. And this is something that just popped in my head. Like, let's just say your kid is deficient in a certain vitamin, and the kid don't want to take this vitamin for nothing. Like, you literally, like when I was little, they had to hold me down, take my medicine or whatever. And I had to take it against my will, and it was a whole thing. Like, the whole family would have to get together and just hold my hands down. Somebody would be holding my hands, somebody holding my legs. The other person would be holding my nose, so that I had no choice but to breathe through my mouth. And so my mouth would open, and they would drop whatever the medicine they had to put in. It was like that bad. So instead of doing that, if you work with the will, an example of working with the will of your child would be, okay, we got to take this particular vitamin. You can get this vitamin through broccoli, or there's another vegetable that has that same high concentrate of that vitamin in, say, Brussels sprouts. Okay? Which one would you like to take? If you work with the will of your child, you'll find things will go much easier. Let's just say they don't like either one. Okay. well, we know we gotta take this if we want to get better. So, do you want to take it at 10 a.m. or you want to take it at 2? The same thing. The example I use for the elderly parent. It's about giving people choices, and a lot of people will say, if we emulate our Father, and this is basically what He did in the Garden of Eden. A lot of people will say, why would God put the tree of knowledge of good and evil inside the garden, knowing that the Adam and Eve have a chance to sin and disobey Him? And it's because God did not want. God had to put that tree in there in order to give them an option to obey or disobey, to give them an option to be, well, in order to give them the ability to exercise their free will. They would not have been able to exercise their free will if there was no tree there, if there was no way of sinning. They had to have the option there to be able to exercise their free will. Now, there's probably more reasons than one why that tree was there, but that was for that's the only that's what God has shown me. That's what God was showing me. So I'm not going to speak on anything else. And I know there's a lot of stuff out there why that tree was there. And I know the tree shows up again. I think the tree. No, that's the tree. I don't know. I think the tree shows up again in Revelation. Or maybe that's the tree of life. I don't know. But anyway, something to look into. But yeah, we had to have the option. We had to have the option. And with this free will, it is a gift. So yeah, guys, I'm going to end it right there, because the what God is showing me, it is, I will be on here longer than I have time for. So I'm going to have to do at least one more part. So you might get part 2 and possibly part 3. Definitely going to do a part 2 because there's more to the will. This thing is very deep. And it is, like I'm touching on a person to person level, on a micro level. But God wants me to talk about the will in terms of the macro level, like in terms of society. God wants me to touch on that. I don't have time to go into that right now. So that's going to be part 2. And then I possibly might have a part 3. But I feel like this was the most urgent message that God wanted me to get out, because there's some of you out there that are struggling trying to deal with people, and God is saying the real issue is not what you see on the surface. The real issue is what's behind the behind the scenes. And what comes to mind to me in my daily life is I deal a lot with kids. And there's kids that, I know them on a regular, I know them. I see them every day, 5 days a week. And when they come in and they acting funky, then more than what they usually do, I will, I'll go to them and say, okay, this is whatever is going on. It's not because I told them to do their assignment. That's not their issue. The issue is there is something going on behind the scenes. And a lot of times it's because they feel out of control. So the only thing they can control is them saying that I'm not doing this. I'm not doing the assignment. But the real core of the issue, 9 times out of 10, is always something that went on the night before, or something that's going on in their friendships or their social life. There's something that's going on that has to do with their will, that they feel like they're out of control. And so once you get to the core, one particular little boy comes to mind. Once you get to the core, he was acting up, and I said, what's going on with you? And I was like, why you the way. I was like, why you're acting like this? Sometimes all it takes is just asking the question to show that you care. Not just walking by and ignoring the kid while they freaking out. A lot of times, and I have to admit, there are a lot of times that where at first I was just like, maybe I shouldn't touch this. I'll make it worse. So the kid is acting up, and I remember I just went to him and I would just said, you don't usually act like this. I said, when you come back tomorrow, I want to make sure that you're acting accordingly, that you're behaving yourself. Well, I'm not going to be here tomorrow anyway. I said, why not? Because I'm moving. So there you have it. The child was acting up because of the sadness, because he has out of control. When you are a child, you're being led by your parents. You got to go here and there. You don't get a choice. And so that child's will is not to leave. That child's will is not to go to, change schools, go to a different district. That's not that child's will. So the kid is acting out. And after I said, oh my goodness, I wish that I'd known today was your last day. I said, can I have a hug? Oh my goodness. And immediately as I acknowledged that child's inner self, what was going on behind the scenes, immediately you could just see the behavior dissolve. It didn't solve his problem. He wasn't going to get what he wanted. He's still moving. But it acknowledged the inner self of what was going on. It acknowledged that, okay, this child's will is to stay here, but it's out of his control. But at least I showed, or somebody showed, that they cared. They cared about my decision. They cared about who I am inside. And they cared about that, my will to stay. And immediately, like I said, as soon as I acknowledged that, the child behavior came back to I guess norm, to baseline. But anyway, I'm sorry guys. If you know why, I know why the people were cowboys, because that means that's their independence. Usually when you think about a cowboy, you think about them being independent and being able to manifest their own destiny. Hollywood has pretty much glamorized the cowboy as somebody being independent and kind of making their own rules. Not saying that's historically correct, but that's why I'm seeing cowboy. That's why I'm seeing cowboys. But if any one of you guys have any idea whatsoever of why God will put them as Asians, let me know. Maybe it has something to do with their the culture, and I'm not an expert on their culture. I do know some things, but I'm not an expert on it. So, or maybe someone listening is from an Asian culture, and maybe might be able to say reason why God would be showing me Asians. So, all right, guys. God bless you all. I love you, and I hope this whoever needed to hear this heard it, and it helps you. All right. God bless you. Bye.